Hey, this is Artie Cabral.
This is Sarah Nofke.
This is Stefan Boltz.
This is S. Elliot Brandis, and you're listening to
30-minute
author interviews
with Preston Lay.
Woohoo! Welcome, everybody, to this episode of 30-minute author interviews. Our guest today is Will Swardstrom. Thank you so much for stopping by today, Will.
Thanks, Preston, for having me on.
Not a problem. For those that might not know who you are or what you do, can you kind of give them a little bio on who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am a speculative fiction author. I've been publishing a little over 3 years now. I've got my name on 4 full-length novels and, I don't know, half dozen to a dozen short stories that are either published or in the process of publishing somewhere. I've lost track of those. The last couple books and at least one of the short stories I've written as well, maybe 2. I've co-written with my brother, Paul. He can't be here tonight, but we co-write a lot of things together. He's actually he's like 2,000 miles away from me, so we kind of have an interesting co-writing relationship there. But I'm by day a history teacher at a high school in Southern Illinois, and just have a lot of fun writing and enjoying the whole indie publishing game and all that.
So since you said you write with your brother, I'm just going to go ahead and get to one of our fan questions. It's something I wanted to know also. It comes from Ernie Lewis, and he says, I have a younger brother who also writes, but I am admittedly a tyrant when it comes to my writing. How do you make it work with your brother?
Sure. And obviously, you hear stories about siblings that bicker and all that. And I'm sure when we were kids, we did as well. But our personalities, me and Paul, were both very laid back. We're pretty chill. And, we kind of both have the attitude with most things of, well, it is what it is. So we work really well together. We kind of started with a novel last year. Took about the better part of a year to write last year, and then that went so well we decided to do another one this year. And since we are so far apart, we don't ever get a chance to really sit down and talk about the book or anything. So we do a lot of Facebook messaging back and forth, and we just have Google Docs that we have shared with each other, and he'll write some and I'll write some. The process for our first book and the second book was a little bit different on those, but essentially the same. And, I think that he's a great writer. So kind of whenever he writes something, I'm like, oh, that's something I haven't thought of. And I don't really want to ever change anything that he's written. And I just kind of riff off that. And whenever I write, apparently he must think about the same as me, because he doesn't really have any complaints about me either. And then he just kind of goes off of that too. So it works really well. I got to say that I have another brother and a sister as well. I do not think that me and them would be able to work the same way that me and Paul would. It just, with the personalities and the temperaments just don't mix as well with them as me. I love them. I just don't think we'd be able to write a book together.
Right. So for the first one y'all did, it was Blank, correct?
Right. Yes.
Who came up with that story idea?
I guess it was me. I don't know. I was at a weird time in my life. We can get into that as well if we want to, but I really hadn't written much at all in about 6 months. It was a big dry spell. I'd written a little bit here and there just because, I kind of had to for a couple of things that I'd signed up to do, but just not really much. And I remember it was Martin Luther King Day weekend or something like that, and I wrote some kind of weird Facebook post, and a lot of people commented on it, and then I was like, oh, I'm just going to kind of riff on this the next day. So I waited until the next day, and I did another little thing, and then by the third day, it started. I kept on going with this for like a month straight, but by the third or fourth day, it definitely started getting into fiction territory, and we started developing this whole big backstory for it. And then after a couple weeks, Paul wrote me a message like, "Hey, do you mind if I write some in your little world there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So a couple weeks later, he sends me this couple 1,000-word piece that's all about like the secondary character that I created that I didn't have any other plans for. And then so we kind of went with that. And for a long time, we openly published it, kind of similar to what Andy Weir did with The Martian and whatnot. At a certain point, though, we stopped because we weren't able to keep up with it on a daily basis. But that's kind of how it started, and it was just kind of this fun little thing that I didn't really expect anything to come out of it, and it's the longest thing that I've written to date. When it started with like a 10-word Facebook post.
It is a good little doorstop if you need one.
It is. It's a fat little book.
It is. Now, that post you're talking about, didn't that have to do with, was it lotion or like,
yeah, it was like
dry face or something?
Like my forehead was dry and it was peeling, and I just, as a 35, 36-year-old man, I'd never had my forehead dry before or some reason. I don't know, but that's essentially what it is.
That's funny. So for those that might not have heard about Blank, can you just give them kind of the non-spoiler book blurb on what that is about?
Sure. Well, like I said, it kind of originally started with this Facebook post where I was looking into a mirror and I noticed that my forehead was dry. A couple days into it, the main character, me at the time, had discovered that in reality my forehead wasn't dry, but the guy in the mirror did have a dry forehead. So it kind of explores this idea of like a mirror universe and, alternate realities in that sense and whatnot. But it's really the secondary character that I had kind of forgotten about and whatever that ultimately becomes the protagonist of the book. We kind of like, after a couple months in, I'm like, whatever I'm writing is not as good and is not, the characters aren't as fully realized as the character that Paul's writing. So kind of flipped the whole script around and we made it about Agent Smith. He's part of a secret kind of government agency called the Utility Company, kind of a X-Files, kind of a Fringe kind of vibe to it, where they investigate kind of weird cases that other law enforcement maybe won't touch, and they kind of end up on Earth too. So there's shades of the Flash series on TV in there as well. So it's a fun little book. Yeah.
You've also been in Samuel Peralta's Future Chronicles, and you've also been in Daniel Smith's Tales from Canyons of the Damned. And I want to ask you two questions about Tales from the Canyons of the Damned. It's about your natural-born alien story. The first question is, can you tell us how to correctly pronounce Bob's real name?
I don't even know. I'm pretty sure I just I'm pretty sure that the day I wrote it, I just took my hand and I just slammed it on the keyboard, and that's what it ended up being. I don't even remember it's like Rob, and then the rest of it I can't even pronounce. I don't even know. So we just shorten it to Bob. I don't even remember what I wrote.
That is hilarious. Now, when I read it, I was just laughing so much. It's such a fun little story to read. Is that one of the stories you've had the most fun writing?
I think so. This was written back in March or April. I think it was published in April. I might have written it in March. But it's before all of the primaries were done with in American politics at the time. And obviously, it's right now, the date that we're filming that we're recording this is the night of the third debate. So once we're done with this, I'll be tuning into the third presidential debate. And so a lot of the story is this kind of riff on the presidential politics and how ridiculous it got in 2016. And really, at the time, like, I'm writing the story about an alien who, because of the quirks of the Constitution, ends up being able to run for president and all the ridiculous things he does. And there are definitely some kind of Easter eggs or cookies in there for people who follow politics, and especially this year. But I think that this year's election has even surpassed my own fictional expectations. And there you go.
Where did you get all of his political stances? Because they were just all hilarious. I was kind of aiming for, if I could offend people from both parties, and I felt like I was doing a good job. At one time he talks I think the press reporter asks him about aliens coming down from space or something, and he vows to build a wall between the Earth and the aliens, and we're going to make the aliens pay for the wall. So there's that in there, and also comes out that because he's an alien, he's like the only one of his kind on Earth. He can essentially change genders and change sexes, so he ends up being the first transgender presidential candidate in history. And so I tried to throw a bunch of the current topics that was going on at the time in there, and hopefully there's something for everybody and something that will offend everybody in there as well. You should somehow make it required reading for your history class. I might get fired. You might. It's such a funny story. So the latest book that you have out, you wrote with your brother. It's for Nick Webb's Legacy Fleet world, and it's called Vigilance. When you, or not when you wrote it, what was it about Legacy Fleet that made y'all decide to want to ride in it, and whose idea was it? Well, that was my idea, and I kind of drug Paul along on this one. So, I had read Nick's books when I remember when Constitution, the first book in his series, came out. I know I didn't read it right away, but it was within the first couple weeks of it coming out. And I'd read some other things that he'd written. He's written a couple stories in Sam Peralta's Future Chronicles stories, and I just really liked the things that he'd written. So I thought, I'll give this a try. A lot of shades of First Contact stuff in there, and like some Ender's Game type situations. So just a lot of really good stuff in there, and it's I really enjoyed the book. Really fresh take on the material. And so then when the second and third books came out, I pretty much gobbled them up right away. And I kind of didn't really think about it a whole lot. And then it was before summer, so probably May, I want to say, maybe April. He announces that to mostly the Future Chronicles people and to some other people that he's going to be have a Kindle Worlds for his Legacy Fleet series. And he put together a series Bible for everything, and it's exceptionally well organized and put together. And at first I'm like, yeah, I want on board. And I did have a story in the Legacy Fleet Chronicles anthology, which actually is a tie-in to the novel as well. And so I had that. I kind of had, I'll do that. But then Nick reached out to me personally. He's like, I actually was going to ask if you would like to write a novel. And I was flattered. And so because I was flattered, I decided to write a novel. Right. But I also, as an author, I recognize my own shortcomings. And especially as I've worked with my brother Paul, I've seen what he does really well and what I do maybe not as well. And what he does really well is he writes action scenes. And I'm a lot better at like dialogue and personal interactions between people and things like that. So the two of us, we really pair up pretty good for those kind of books where there's, obviously personal dynamics between people, but then there's, some action scenes as well. So I told him about this opportunity. I said, I think it would be good. At least it'd be a challenge, if nothing else, for us. And, but he hadn't read the books.
at all. So I'm like, okay, so read this book. Let me know if you're interested in doing this. And he liked it a lot. So we kind of went from there. And what ended up happening is that not the last half of the book, but probably the last 40% or so is essentially his. So I wrote over half the book, but what we call in the Legacy Fleet world, the Korsky incident, which is where the main characters kind of earn their to a certain degree, and it's a very controversial part of the history of the books. We were kind of able to, put our own spin on that and kind of tell the inside story, and it hasn't really been told in print yet. So we have that. I know some other authors are working on their own stories that are involving it as well, but I'm pretty sure we're the first ones to have it in print of kind of what this, or at least a huge chunk of what this event was.
Sounds good. Rob McClellan wants to know about your Kindle World experience. I think you're the first author I've had on here that has actually written in a Kindle World. So what's that whole experience like? Are there certain rules and things like that you have to follow?
Sure. It is different than, just regularly publishing on Kindle Direct or KDP, as we call it. So there's rules. So for Nick, for example, Nick sets up this world with Kindle that there's certain rules to it. Now, of course, it's essentially like a fan fiction universe, and a lot of ways, I'm a fan fiction writer in this case, but because it's got Nick's seal of approval on it, we find it a little bit more official than other fan fiction you might just find on like a Slash website or something like that. Mm-hmm. But there is we don't have control over pricing on the books, for one. Once we publish it, it belongs to Amazon. So Amazon actually holds the rights to the book. I think Amazon and Nick collectively hold the rights to the book, if my memory is correct, but they hold the rights to the book. So some people have asked me for like audiobook. I can't produce an audiobook for it. If Amazon wants to, that's up to them, but I cannot. Okay. And pricing is up to them. And there's like a tier to it as well. If you publish anything with them that's like under 10,000 words, I think they price it at like 99 cents. If you write anything that's between like 10,000 and 50,000 words, they price it at, I think, $1.99. And then anything above 50,000 words, they consider a novel, and it's priced at $3.99. So, those are some of the things that you kind of have to deal with. And some of us have caught a little flack for things because, those books, all these books are priced at $3.99. It's not as long of a novel as, say, Blink. And right now I currently have Blink priced at 99 cents for the Kindle version. So I understand the frustrations. It's also right now available only in the U.S. So anybody in Europe or Canada can't get Vigilance. But if they really want to read it, they can email me and we'll figure something out.
Right. Will this book ever be available like for a physical copy, or is that all up to Amazon?
Officially, no. Okay. I do know of some other Kindle Worlds authors who have kind of bypassed the system and kind of printed their own copies up before. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say any names, right. But that's I probably will not. I don't want to kind of poke the bear, so to speak. So I'll probably just leave that alone and let Amazon do with it what they will. So it will probably just be ebook only. Okay. In that case. Now I've written some before this, so this is in Nick Webb's world. I've also written some wool fiction as well before. So I've had some previous experience with Kindle Worlds. It's just been like 3 years since I've had to deal with it. Right.
And so most of the stuff that you write kind of has like a sci-fi feel to it, and then Legacy Fleet's more of a like space opera.
Yeah, space opera, military, Marines, something like that.
Were there certain things you needed to research or kind of learn or craft a little bit better in order to go kind of from one genre to something that's kind of a little different?
I probably. I think if one of us did more research than the other, it was definitely Paul, because I kind of assigned him this part of the book that is it will definitely have kind of a shared universe, shared history feel to it with other authors. Like as we've been writing this particular aspect of the book, he and I have kind of been in contact with some other authors that are planning to include parts or some of the story in their own. So there's been certainly some more research in those areas for it. Just working with Nick and working with some of these other people, like, what if we did this with this character? Would this work? And somebody's like, no, we can't do that because I have this character alive in my book. So, we're kind of trying to work with some of these other authors to make sure technically our stories aren't canon, but we want to make sure that, we're trying to make them as canon as possible. So if Nick ever wants to use them, he's certainly more than welcome to in his future books as well. As for my stuff, there's some, and definitely Nick's Bible that he made for his world, his universe, played a big factor into that as well, that he had all of this information already. I want to say it was like a 50-page PDF that had like all the ships that were in his first 3 books and all the characters and all the worlds and the alien races and everything was in there. So, I poured over that a bunch as well. But at the end of the day, it's really about the story and it's really about the characters. And so, maybe you say, photon torpedo instead of, laser blaster or something like that. But that doesn't concern me as much as, are the characters connecting and resonating with people? Maybe that's not what I should say, but that's how I feel.
Sounds good. So for those that might be curious, what's kind of the book blurb, non-spoiler version of that book, or what it's about?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pull it up here I'll just read the blurb to you. So, as I was reading the first book in Nick's series, one character in particular stood out, and I just really wanted to know kind of more of his backstory. So, the book doesn't go on from what Nick's already written. In fact, it's more of kind of a prequel of sorts of what that is. So the blurb is, readers of Nick Webb's Legacy Fleet trilogy met Abraham Hawes as the executive officer of Captain Granger's Constitution. But there's an unspoken story lurking behind the scenes. Who was Commander Hawes? Vigilance follows Hawes from his beginnings as the son of a war hero, to his tumultuous days in the academy, to a mission where he risks everything, and ultimately to the famous Korsky incident. Through it all, Abe Hawes is slowly molded into the man readers grew to love in the first of Webb's best-selling novels. In the end, Hawes must fight to deal with the aftermath of his and Granger's actions when everything hits the fan at Battalion 3.
For people that haven't read Legacy Fleet, do they need to read that to have a better understanding of your story, or can they read your story and be okay?
Well, I would say the only book in Nick's universe at all that you'd probably need to read to understand anything at all in ours would be his first book, which would be Constitution. But I think Paul and I wrote it fairly well enough that you could probably read it as a standalone, and it would still make a lot of sense to you. There are some kind of tie-ins here and there to the first novel, but we tried to set it up as a standalone as best we could so that you didn't really have to read that to understand what's going on.
Another fan question that we got in, and I think I know where she's coming from with this, was from Caroline A. Gill, and she wants to know, how do you view women in science fiction as writers or characters?
Women in science fiction are fantastic, and it's one of those things that when I was a kid and growing up and, I read a lot of science fiction, I probably, I don't know that I ever really cared if there was women writing or not, but I definitely don't think I read as many women. Even some of the ones that are women, like Andre Norton, I didn't find out till like I was an adult that Andre Norton was a woman. So like some of these authors, they kind of have these kind of gender neutral names for publishing purposes. And so it was one of those, I read it and I didn't kind of realize I read them. But in terms of writers, some of the best authors out there today are women science fiction writers. Mm-hmm. You got Anne Christie, who's putting out some amazing stuff. Jen Wells, her stories right now with her Fluency and the sequel that just came out not too long ago are amazing. And a lot of other authors as well. Even Caroline, who wrote the question there, I read some of her stuff, and there's some great stuff that's out there right now by women authors. As for characters, it's hard. And I'll say it as somebody who's married, and I've been married for, 16 years at this point, that knowing the mind of a woman is not an easy thing. So, I will say that whenever I do write women in my stories, I try to honor them as best as possible and make sure that I'm doing, what I can to portray the character correctly. And again, at the end of the day, for me, it's all about the characters, and it's about the connection with those characters. So if I write a character that comes off as, two-dimensional and flat because I'm just portraying the stereotypes that you see on TV or whatever, then that's not going to make my book good. It's not going to make the characters any good. It's not going to make the book good in the long run. So, I try to make sure that women are portrayed fairly and accurately in my books as well.
And my idea of where the question was coming from, I want to say it was near the end of last year. You actually wrote, I think it was a blog post.
It was about a year ago.
Wasn't it when Patrice Fitzgerald put out the Dark Beyond the Stars anthology?
Yes.
And you wrote this great article about women science fiction writers. I will try. I might have to get it from you, but I will get the link to that article and put it up for anybody that would like to read it.
Sure. Essentially, the gist of the article, well, there was a guy who had reviewed the book, and I think he gave it 2 stars or something like that on Amazon. But then, and you get those 1-2 star reviews, you take them or leave them. It's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. But in his review, he basically said that women can't be science fiction writers. And so it was an issue. It kind of went viral. I mean, we had, a lot of different people writing about it. I think that Will Wheaton even blogged about it. I don't even remember, but there's a lot of John Scalzi. He had seen the review. He probably read my blog post as well. Some of the things that Scalzi wrote had hints of things that I had written as well. I'm not sure, but there was a lot of stuff that was written about it, and so I'd written a blog post as well. And essentially, a lot of it goes back to my own daughter. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she's in 7th grade right now, and the possibilities for her are endless. Like, there's anything that she can do in life at this point, and for a man who doesn't know her at all to just show up on a book review and say, you can't do this because of, body parts that you weren't born with, has no basis in reality, right? Just like, all these stories, like it's the stories that matter and whatnot. It's the, what's in your head that matters. It's not your body parts. And, there's so much going around these days, thanks to some of the, politics of the moment and whatnot with, women and women's rights and how men are treating women and all this. And, I think kind of what happened a year ago with this was a little bit of the tip of the iceberg in terms of how some men feel about women. And so I felt pretty strongly about it, that I don't think that we should limit anybody in society, based on who they are, based on their gender or whatever. That anybody can be anything they want to be.
If you had to recommend for somebody that's never read or they don't think they've ever read a woman science fiction author, what would be one of the first books that you would recommend for them to go read?
Well, in terms of somebody who's been published for a long time, I mean, my own, because I've, grew up reading her, Anne McCaffrey with the Dragon Riders of Pern and the Pern novels. She's just somebody that I grew up reading. So I would definitely go back to her in a heartbeat. I'll sometimes read those books just for fun. Like I mentioned, Jen Wells, she has what's called her Confluence series. She just recently published a new book called The Druid Gene. She would be a new kind of up-and-comer. Risa Walker, amazing author. She's, got her time travel series. She just started a new series that just came out, the first book not too long ago. And even Patrice. Patrice isn't so much of the writer as she is a publisher these days, but she is really, kind of pushing the boundaries in terms of what women can and should do. And she is really knocking it out of the park in so many ways. So, keeping an eye on all those women is a fantastic place to go.
And if I remember right, didn't Risa Walker just have her time travel series put into a comic book as well?
She did, and actually, it's sitting in my front room right now. I just got, I think, the last copy of it today in the mail, and I haven't opened the envelope yet. I have all of them sitting on a shelf, and I've actually been waiting for the last one to come. I think it's just a 4-issue like miniseries, and I was waiting for the last one, and now I'm gonna zip right through all 4 of them. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, here at the Legendarium, we like to end on a section that we call the legendary ending. And these are just some kind of not very serious questions. So just whatever comes to your mind. And I'm actually going to use some of the fan questions that were asked online when I mentioned I was interviewing you. So the first question is going to come from Ellen Campbell. She wants to know, are you very, very sad that her Vikings are leading the NFC North?
Well, Ellen is my editor, so I'm never sad if it's something that makes her happy.
There we go. I might say this guy's last name wrong. Matt Thayer wants to know, what is the airspeed velocity of an African swallow?
Well, and as I told Matt on Facebook today, it all has to do with weight ratios. But I will just say about Matt that his mother was a hamster and that his father smells of elderberries.
Very nice. Gareth Foy would like to know, how do you manage to write on the school bus?
Yeah, so I did this one time. I posted a photo, and I even commented that I was riding on the school bus last year. I think it was when I was working on Blink. I'd taken my Chromebook with me on a bus. It's not easy. We'll say that. There is just, especially as you get older and you become an adult, those are not meant for adults. And your knees just get all cramped up in there with those really tall backs, and it's just, there's no easy way to sit. So, and it doesn't help if you're trying to write a couple hundred words as well. So, not easily, I guess, would be the answer to that.
There we go. What songs are currently on your writing playlist?
When I do writing, I don't do like the Spotify thing. Not that I haven't figured it out. It's just not my thing. I do more Pandora. I just like to let the music come or whatever. But I have, like a John Williams playlist, and it's not just John Williams, for like movie soundtracks, but, like him and Hans Zimmer and those type of scores for movies. And it just kind of really gets me into the music. I know even like Jen Wells shared a Pandora playlist that was like sci-fi inspirational songs. And it's all this kind of trippy out there music. So if I'm writing something weird, sometimes I turn that on. I can't say I'm a closet fan because I say it all the time everywhere if I'm asked, but I'm a big ABBA fan, the Swedish disco group in the 70s and 80s. And so I've got the entire box set of all their music. They recorded 99 songs, and so I've got them all. And if I need to, I'll go to that in a pinch. My dad was a big fan growing up, and it just kind of,
right.
I just followed in my father's footsteps, I guess.
There you go. If you were stuck in a zombie apocalypse, which one of your book characters would you want to be stuck with?
Ooh, that is a tough one. Would I want to be stuck with? Like, to get me out of the zombie apocalypse?
Sure.
Is that what that is supposed to be?
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know.
Who would help you survive?
Well, I wrote a novella called Ant Apocalypse a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's the book that kind of made me the most queasy writing it. And in the story, the protagonist's kitten becomes a zombie cat. So maybe that, if I could like sick the kitten on the zombies, maybe.
Sounds good.
I don't know.
If you could pick any character from any media source to be stuck in a zombie apocalypse with, comic books, movies, books, whatever, who would you want to be stuck with?
Maybe like the Vision from Marvel, or
okay,
something like somebody can just wipe them all out with like a single blink or something. Darth Vader would be cool, I suppose.
That'd work. If you had a time machine, where would you travel and why?
Ooh, the future is tempting, but I don't know. Maybe like the early 1800s. I kind of really like the early 1800s time period when the French Revolution's going on and the War of 1812 over here. So whether it's Napoleon's last battle or maybe the Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812, maybe seeing what's going on at one of those.
Okay.
That'd be kind of cool.
There we go. And if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
The ability to this kind of goes like the Star Trek technology for the transporters.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I could just be anywhere at a moment's notice, because I like car trips. I hate driving.
Right.
So like if I could just be there in an instant without having to like drive 2 hours, because I kind of live in a rural area, so we kind of have to drive anywhere that we want to get to.
Yeah.
So
I know exactly what you mean.
Like the nearest Walmart's 20 minutes away, but that's not the best Walmart. So if you want to get to a good Walmart, you have to go like 45 minutes away.
Wow.
And the mall's like an hour away. And it's like, anything that you want to go to is, we don't measure it in miles because it's all just minutes. It's all the same thing.
Right. And then the question that we're famous for here, a penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say and why is he here?
He says, come with me if you want to live. And then he's there because there's a penguin zombie apocalypse and he's got the cure. Maybe. I don't know.
There we go.
Sure. That sounds as good as anything.
Right. Before we leave, do you have any advice, whether it be for writing or for life, that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So I did my first podcast that I ever did. I don't even remember the place that I did it with, but I kind of feel a little bit bad about this now because they tweet it every like couple weeks, and it kind of haunts me to this day because it was during that 6 months when I really wasn't writing very much.
Right.
So I kind of had this thing like you just have to write some every day, and that's fine. If you're the person that needs to write some every day, then write them every day. But if that doesn't work for you, then write when you can. Because Paul and I just finished this book, I probably haven't. I wrote a few words the other day, but I'm probably not going to write any today. I might write some tomorrow. I don't know. We'll just have to see. And should I write some every day? You know, if I'm taking this seriously, I probably. But sometimes I just don't have time, and that comes with the territory of right now I have a 6-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter, and I have a day job, and I have a wife, and like I said, I live in a rural area, and sometimes you have to drive a long ways to get places. And you know, during that 6 months, it was right after we'd adopted our son, and I was kind of getting used to this new way of life, and we adopted him, so there was a lot of you know, he's getting used to us, we're getting used to him. He wasn't sleeping a whole lot, so because of that, we weren't sleeping a whole lot. And I just felt terrible and more terrible every day because I wasn't writing. I had already put out 2 novels, and I kind of got stalled out on the 3rd one, which is still out there. It's still going to get written someday. I just don't know when. But you know, it's I was beating myself up every day. And finally, I just had to realize that I'm doing what I need to be doing, and I can't beat myself up over this stuff because I'll just make myself miserable. So, you know, write some every day if that's what you need to do. But if you need to do other stuff because you have a well-rounded life and you have a family and kids, and especially a 6-year-old boy, because 6-year-old boys are crazy, then do that. And then write what you can when you can. But, you know, don't stress yourself out over it. It's not worth it.
Sounds good. And I think you dropped a hint in there to a question I should have already asked, but I haven't. It was one I'm wondering and one Ellen is wondering. Was that hint at the 3rd book in the Dead trilogy?
Right. So, yeah, I'd written the first 2 books, and then I legit, so this is 2 years ago now. Mm-hmm. That summer, I'd written the first 1/3 of the book. So I've got over 20,000 words down, maybe even 25. And then some stuff started happening, and then we all of a sudden got the phone call, hey, you need to come and get your son from this country in the middle of Africa. So we kind of picked up and left. And then again, like I said, I didn't sleep for like 6 months. And so by the time I kind of got through that, you know, there's a certain amount of it. I was just kind of ready to put that behind me. And, you know, I just wanted to write some stuff for fun, which is kind of where Blink came from. Mm-hmm. And by that point, I'm kind of roped into Sam Peralta's world, and he's like, okay, write this. And so I've got some things that I had to write, and I've gone back and I've reread my first 2 books in that series. I've reread what I wrote, and actually it still works. And I just need to finish it sometime. When will that be? That's a good question. I can't tell you.
Sounds good.
I'm not organized, and yeah. I should make that my next thing, but I don't know if I will.
Write it whenever it feels right to you.
That's right.
Where can our listeners go if they want to learn more about you or your books?
I'm on Facebook. I don't utilize my author page very much, but I do have a personal and an author page. I am friends with a number of readers as well. But certainly go to my author page, and I do try to post there occasionally. I'm on the Twitter. I think it's W Swardstrom, but I don't really tweet much. But my Amazon page, just look up my name, Will Swardstrom, SWARDSTROM, and you can find me there and check out all the books.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and do 30-minute author interviews. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Preston.
Well, guys, that's all the time we've got for this episode. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and listening to 30-minute author interviews. I hope you come back each and every Wednesday when we'll be posting a brand new author interview. Do you want to know who we're going to be interviewing? Head on over to legendarium.com and sign up for the newsletter that we have. I send out a newsletter on the 1st and 15th, and in it, you'll find out the next 4 podcast episodes that are coming up. So head on over, sign up for the newsletter, and always be up to date. Until next time, guys, remember to always stay legendary. And if you would wait and subscribe. It weighs about 250.